are listening to a song sung in a language called Ammerdoc, a language spoken in northern Australia. There is virtually only one person left on our planet who speaks Ammerdoc. His name is Charlie Mangul.
A language nearly gone from an Aboriginal community on Australia's Goulburn Islands. The new PBS documentary Language Matters explores tongues around the globe at risk of being lost forever and what is lost with them.
We are being narrowed and homogenized by the loss of languages that we're not even aware of.
Predictions are dire that by the end of this century, more than half of the world's 6,000 languages will be gone.
Every language has poetry, although it's very different from culture to culture. And as I began to learn about how these languages are disappearing, that kind of poetry is also going. The entire inner life of a people is disappearing when their language vanishes. Is that your language?
Bob Holman, in fact, came to this project as a poet, one long interested in oral traditions, including contemporary hip-hop. He and filmmaker David Grubin traveled from Australia to Wales to Hawaii, looking at languages on the brink and how some people are fighting to bring them back. I talked with Holman recently at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum in Washington.
Each of these languages holds a little piece of information or a lot of information, can hold information about medicines and health, can hold information about the constellations in the sky, and that's an information that if you lose the language, you lose that connection with that place, with that way of thinking, with tens of thousands of years of that language's lineage.
Hey everybody, today we'll be talking about indigenous languages becoming extinct. A month ago or so we watched a video of Wade Davis. The video was about indigenous languages becoming extinct at an alarming rate. Davis discusses how out of 6,000 languages once existing, now half of them are no longer being taught. I find this so interesting because when ideas go extinct, we all grow poorer, and that's the same with languages. The voices of the last speakers of many languages are quickly fading away, and they will never be heard again. Linguists are rushing to record the tongues of many of the last native speakers so the voices can be preserved. An endangered language is one that is likely to become extinct in the future. Multiple languages are being lost due to a lack of use and being replaced by others that are more frequently used in the region. Many languages aren't being taught to new generations of children, and these languages will become extinct when the person who last speaks passes. Dozens of languages today have only one native speaker living. The last speakers of probably half of the world's languages are alive today. As they grow old and die, their voices will fall silent. Their children and grandchildren, by overwhelming majority, will either choose not to learn or will be deprived of the opportunity to learn the ancestral language. Most of the world's languages have never been written down anywhere, so we do not even know what we are losing when these languages die. A good example of what is lost when a language dies is an English teacher in Dubai, Patricia Ryan, who took her students out to the garden to teach them the names of plants but ended up being the student, as their students became the teachers of all the medicinal and nutritional plants, knowledge gained from their grandparents who still spoke only the local native dialect. In 2005, 204 languages had communities consisting of 10 or fewer speakers. An additional 344 languages had between 10 and 99 speakers. The 548 languages with fewer than 99 speakers make up about 1/10 of the world's languages. All of those languages are faced with disappearance. There's little to none chance of these languages being passed on to new speakers. Even a large language such as Navajo with nearly 150,000 speakers may be in trouble. If a population size like that can't keep a language, then what can? English is replacing most languages in the United States, and Spanish is replacing most in Mexico. Unless there's a change in current trends, the endangered languages will become extinct. The invasion of English words is a more serious threat to Gallic identity than the Nazi occupation of the World War II. As the use of English becomes increasingly worldwide, more concerns are being created. English has spread, dominating into India, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Puerto Rico, and most of the United States. When small communities abandon their language to switch to English or Spanish, there is a huge severance of the transfer of traditional knowledge across generations. Knowledge is packaged in particular ways for each language. Political and social discrimination against a language or its speakers are a major cause of the death of a language. This could take the form of state policies to subdue speech, or it may be neglected. Konstantin Mukhov, one of the last speakers of Tofa, a language of Siberia, tells his experience with his native language. Mukhov recalls being punished for speaking his native tongue instead of Russian in schools. He states, "When I was a child, they sent us to the village school. Lessons were in Russian only, and I couldn't understand anything. The teacher used to beat me when I couldn't answer in Russian. In the mornings, he would test his stick to see if it was supple enough to hit us with." This is not the first story I've heard like Mukhov's. In 1974, there was a case that the United States Supreme Court took on called Law v. Nichols. The court unanimously decided that San Francisco Schools District did not provide enough special help for students with limited English. There's many different sides to this case, but ultimately it is said that schools don't provide an opportunity to teach bilingually. Politics have an influence on a language's chances through time and place. The most drastic impact on the resilience of a language is the genocide, for example, in World War II. Yiddish was destroyed. The Nazi invasion in Poland in 1939, and then the destruction of Yiddish culture in Europe during the war, created the language and the culture to disappear out of Europe. The Holocaust led to a drastic decline in Yiddish as the Jewish communities that used Yiddish were killed. As my knowledge grows on the topic of languages, I have developed greater knowledge on why diversity of languages is so important. What do we stand to lose when a language vanishes? I don't think anyone can answer that question. It has become a cliche to talk about a cure for cancer that may be found in the Amazon rainforest, perhaps from a medicinal plant known only local to the shamans. But pharmaceutical companies have spread no efforts to get at this knowledge, and in many cases have exploited it to develop useful drugs. An estimated $85 billion in profits per year is made by pharmaceutical companies on medicines derived from plants first known to indigenous peoples for their healing properties. By credible estimates, an astonishing 87% of the world's living plant and animal species have not yet been identified, named, described, or classified by modern science. In conclusion, I have found that there are many factors leading up to the point of extinction for a language. Languages are most commonly crowded out due to a lack of use, being replaced by others that are more frequently used in the region, and not being taught to new generations. We need to stand up for diversity and let people know that it is okay for other cultures to not speak English for a main language, and that it's important to remember that all languages matter. Yes, we should have a global language to reduce communication errors, but no, we shouldn't forget native languages that are going to make a difference in our future and build a lot of knowledge.